Utah politics.
Thanks so much for joining us. I'm Glenn Mills. It is time to go inside Utah politics. We do begin this morning with Kael Weston, former Democratic candidate for U.S. Senate. Kael, great to have you on the show. Thanks so much for making time for us.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
Yeah, so just to recap real quick, at convention you were hoping to walk away as the nominee for U.S. Senate for the Democratic Party. That did not happen. Instead, they are putting their support behind a coalition for independent candidate Evan McMullin. Your thoughts right after all that played out?
You know, I think it was an important case to make. 2 years ago, there were 500,000 of our Utah neighbors who voted for a Democrat, and I think they're increasingly engaging on what this decision may mean for them. So rather than, I think, not have this conversation in our party, I think it was very important that we did have this conversation. Of course, I wish the vote had gone differently. I accept the vote. I'm now focused on helping a lot of good Democrats down ballot make their case.
Okay, let's get into that a little bit more, but first I would like to talk about your interest in running. Why did you step up and run for the Democratic nomination for Senate?
Well, I'm proud to be a Utah Democrat. I believe Utah needs a healthy political marketplace. We're the fastest growing state in the country, and I believe in order to have politics that match a lot of the issues that are important to voters, whether that's health care, climate change, the water situation we've got in our state. We need candidates who are going to take those issues all across our state, and I was hoping to be able to be part of that conversation, because when Democrats aren't in the room, I think the people who lose the most are the people who have the least cushion in their lives when government fails, and these are the people I talk about that are at the bus stop and they're not going to the ski resort to pay $150 for a ski pass. They're going to their second or third job. So that's, I think, what's going to be missing in the conversation, at least at the Senate level. I am looking forward to having other candidates on the ballot who are Democrats.
Let's talk a little bit more about convention and how all of that went down. I know there were a lot of backroom discussions between your team and the coalition team. I'm sure you're not going to want to get into all of that, but what are some things you can tell us about maybe what we didn't see going on behind closed doors?
You know, it was a politically packed room. I'll say that, you know, politics can sometimes be a tough business, and I think that we had a great team. We had a lot of supporters who drove in from Kane County and Iron County and, you know, up north in Cache Valley. And so I think it was a time where Democrats understood how important a high school auditorium in Cottonwood was going to be, not just for active Democrats, but for our party. So the crossroads was there. The party delegates, 782, decided that day. Again, I accept that decision, but I believe the net effect is going to be that there may be more disenfranchised, disillusioned voters out there.
Yeah, I want to talk to you about that, because that was one of the big issues that was brought up at convention. Those who are disenfranchised, will they be energized to support Democrats in the election?
We are a divided party, but I want to be part of bridging that divide, and I think that how we do that is to show them that if they don't vote or if they stay home, politics doesn't stay out of your business. It's going to affect you. But I think this is important to remember. It's following the gerrymander. So when our supermajority state legislature, particularly for the congressional seats, severely divided Salt Lake County, I think that is the context that I was trying to push back, that even with the gerrymander, we're going to give people choices on the ballot.
The race that you were in for U.S. Senate, obviously a statewide race, you know that. That has nothing to do with gerrymandering, and that's an area where Democrats have struggled for decades now. You have to go back quite a ways to find a statewide Democrat winner in the state of Utah. What is the dynamic there? What does the party need to do to try to close that gap?
I believe we need to be proud Democrats. I do not believe we should try and reinvent ourselves as Republican light. I think that we stand for poor kids. If you look at legislation last year, the child tax credit, up to 40% of the poorest kids in our country, including a lot of poor kids in Utah, were brought out of poverty. To me, that's not only the right kind of thing to do, it's a good message to take, whether you're in San Juan County or up in Tooele County. We believe in healthcare affordability and access. The Affordable Care Act brought 40 million Americans to better health. It also saved a lot of families from bankruptcy. 14.5 million Americans signed up for the ACA this year. Those are good messages. Those are important messages. We could get to public lands. I was the only candidate who clearly and consistently said the federal government had a big role to play in protecting these amazing public lands we have in Utah. So I guess there are two visions going forward, and my vision is I'm a proud Utah Democrat. We're the fastest growing state in the country, and we should make our case publicly, openly, regularly, and not try and change our messaging. We should just find the messages that work and take them forward.
That was kind of the crux of your situation, though, Kael, is those in the coalition to back Evan McMullin were saying, look, what we're doing isn't working. We need to try something new. Your thoughts on that?
Well, trying something new, I think, is an argument, but the people who are not in that room were the 500,000 people in Utah who 2 years ago, it seems, liked what Democrats brought to the table. I tend to believe that we should trust voters in elections. I always said in the 4 months I was on the campaign trail seeking the official nomination that we should trust voters. And instead, what's come out of this process is basically a decision to say we have decided for you. And we're the Utah Democratic Party, so I believe that the root word of our party is democracy, and I trust voters to make those decisions for themselves. But I'm not looking to cause more of a divide. I am looking, though, to try and make sure that we don't forget who we stand up for. And who we stand up for are the people who are going to pay the biggest price if we don't get better policies in Washington.
So let's get back to this down ticket idea that we have discussed. You mentioned the presidential vote. We all know that a presidential race does draw more people to the polls, but there was a shockingly high number of people who voted for President Biden in the state of Utah and then didn't fill out the rest of the ballot. What's the disconnect there?
Unfortunately, you know, I think...
And more importantly, how's it going to play out in this very situation this year?
The drop-off was real, and, you know, we had candidates, I think, especially at the county level here in Salt Lake, that likely would have been reelected or elected. I think that's one of the risks of not having a Democrat at the top of the ballot. So I've had a lot of people reach out to me, I would say more than a few, who are very concerned whether they're candidates on the ballot right now or just people who believe that their voice and their vote was taken away from them. So the data does show that if there is not a candidate running at the top of the ballot, there is an effect down ballot. And what I'll be spending my time going forward doing is supporting great candidates like Davina Smith in southeastern Utah, Lynette Wendell, Ashley Matthews, Patrick Belmont, who's a water expert up in Cache Valley, Nick Mitchell, Darlene McDonald. We have an amazing cast of Democrats who are going to continue to move forward and make the case. And I just hope that Utahns understand that the only way we get to a healthy political marketplace in Utah is if we give people choices. And the data point, Glenn, that I'm most concerned about is I've been told that 40% of the ballot this year is uncontested. I want to say that again. 40% of the ballot does not have a choice other than one candidate in a certain race on it. And that's when democracy really starts to fail.
All right, Kael, we have run out of time, but I really appreciate you being here and having you back on the show. Not your first time, but very good conversation. Thanks so much.
Thank you.